The NFL world was on the edge of its seat, waiting for Shedeur Sanders to get drafted. And waiting. And waiting. And waiting. That was, it got out of control. The whole thing got so out of control. And look, we talked about it a couple of months ago with our quarterback needy teams and everything like that, and the desperation that comes with that. And I will say, kudos to NFL teams for not doing what NFL teams have done for a very long time. And that is, well, we need a quarterback, draft a quarterback. Need him. We got to get him. Let's do it. Because I feel like there would be a lot of drafts where Shedeur would have gone very early. Now, do I think he fell too much? Yes, I do. I absolutely do. He is better than a 5th round pick. There's no question about that. From a talent aspect, he is so much better than a 5th round pick. But also the talk of him going second at some point, or he wasn't the second best prospect in the draft. When we did the quarterback needy episode a while ago, like during the NFL season, Cam Ward was the 9th best player on people's boards, and Shedeur, I think, was 15, was kind of the consensus where he was at. And so drafting that guy second can set your franchise back a little bit, because while I do think that Shedeur has quite a bit going for him, I also don't believe that he should be a starter year one. And so, the talk of, well, New Orleans needs a quarterback, Pittsburgh needs a quarterback, that is doing him a gigantic disservice to put him in a spot where he needs to go out and needs to be successful right away, especially with Pittsburgh, to go out and battle with Lamar Jackson and Joe Burrow 4 times a year and try to keep up with those teams in the playoffs, while also having to deal with Mahomes and Allen and all these teams in the AFC to try to grow into a playoff spot, while also trying to overcome what are some talent deficiencies in his game. That's not fair to him. It probably also wouldn't have been fair to just throw him out there with the Saints, although you don't really have that same level of competition, and so maybe you could get away with it. But I do think that there is a lot of discussions that need to be had. And I do think that for a very long time, and probably still, there are a lot of things that you can look at in the NFL, and if it's like that seems a little bit questionable. Pointing to racism doesn't seem like it is the biggest stretch to go to when you look at how some NFL people are treated, how some other NFL people are treated, how some NFL people are talked about, and how other NFL people are talked about. So I could absolutely see where if you saw this situation playing out and you just wanted to walk by and be like, that's racism, I can see where you would get to on that one. I genuinely, and look, as a white dude in Canada, maybe this isn't my place to decide. No, I am not the high court of this or anything like that. But I think that there are at least a few football-y things that you can use to justify it. Not racism, but to justify the Shedeur Sanders falling at least here. So I think the big one, and it's Deeds mentioning it in the chat, the reports of him ignoring some teams during interviews is crazy. He is either getting some really, really bad advice, or that's probably it. Or just has an inflated sense of self, which it's probably both, right? That there wasn't, because he's him and his family is what it is, he didn't really have an official agent. And I think that is the first thing. They needed to keep the Dion aspect of it kind of at arm's reach a little bit. And that was one of the things coming out of their camp was that, this is an attack on Dion. I was like, well, if he is so attackable, why do you have him so close to the kid then? And I get father-son relationship. And that is something that is kind of overlooked in all of this because of how they portray themselves sometimes, is that it's really cool that was a relationship that played out over the last 4 years in college. And now that this is going to be an NFL thing that they share. That's a really, really cool thing that could be happening here. But if this is how it's going to play out, it was a gigantic misstep. The advantage of being the Nepo kid is Dion has been in the NFL and he understands kind of how the game works and all those different things. And so as a coach too, and as a recruiter, you have to know that you can't go in with that sort of a thing. Look, if he wants to sandbag an interview with the Chiefs, that seems Kansas City's probably set at quarterback, right? Although, given how this whole thing played out, I would suggest that maybe him being the backup to Mahomes wouldn't have been the worst thing, you know? But yeah, unless you are, look at this draft right now that we just had. Cam Ward, I don't even think Cam Ward could have effectively ignored and sandbagged interviews. You had a pretty good idea that he was going to go one to the Tennessee Titans, but they were saying, look, we're not going to pass up generational talents. Well, that's Travis Hunter and that's Abdul Carter. And then after that, again, there are certain teams that need a quarterback. You probably don't need an interview with the Patriots. They got their guy. But other than that, I don't even think Cam Ward could have really just passed on a lot of interviews. Travis Hunter could have. Travis Hunter didn't need to take an interview with the Packers. He wasn't getting down to the Falcons down at 15. Okay, that wasn't happening. The furthest he was going was 3, maybe 4 if teams got a little frisky with the quarterbacks there. But then after that, he probably didn't need to. I was gonna say he didn't need to take an interview with Jacksonville. Jacksonville ends up taking him, which is also the other part of the Shedeur thing. I'm not gonna be there when you guys draft. It's hey, have you heard of trades? Have you seen some of the dumb trades that have been made? We just saw Ricky Williams on a podcast. The Saints traded their whole draft class for that guy. So I don't think you can dismiss anyone if you are a quarterback and there are teams potentially moving up for you in the draft. So yes, two guys in this entire draft could have sat out the interview process. So it is an arrogance and it is just a level of dumb that should not be happening around that kid. The other part of it is that if he is not going to start for you, is that a distraction you really want? And I don't think he should be starting for you. And so that's why I still think the Raiders were the best situation for him. Because you have for the first time in a long time, you have basically, for lack of a better term, a mature front office in Vegas with Tom Brady as the owner, Pete Carroll, Chip Kelly. These guys have been around the block a time or two. I'm not going to say Chip Kelly's job security is great. One of those things is not like the other. Tom Brady, Pete Carroll, and Chip Kelly. But for Brady and Pete Carroll, they're not going anywhere. They have an understanding, and they've kind of seen a lot of these things before. So if Geno Smith goes 2-3 with the Raiders to start, and Deion Sanders is up at the podium after week 6 in the college football season, I know we just lost 28-21, but what the fuck are the Raiders doing? That Pete Carroll's going to be he can do the Patrick Well. I'm sorry, I couldn't hear. I got my Super Bowl ring in my ear. But those guys can handle that. A lot of coaches couldn't, and a lot of front offices couldn't. And so if you're going to bring him in to redshirt him, which is what the kid needs, maybe you would rather have Jackson Dart. And look, maybe Jackson Dart's ceiling isn't as high as Shedeur's, but Dart's not starting week 1 for the Giants. Neither was Shedeur. And I'm not going to have to fucking hear about it from Deion for week after week after week. And from the media week after week after week. Hey, why isn't the kid playing? Why isn't the kid playing? Because he's not ready. And then I have to say that my kid's not ready. And now that's me shitting on him. And it turns into a whole other thing. So it just became this problem that they created themselves. And that's, you feel tough about it. But again, I do think a lot of the conversations kind of veered way too far away, right? Because I was talking to my wife about the whole situation, explaining to her everything that was going on and everything with it. And then I was like, the good thing is that as the draft was going, and basically after Pittsburgh passed, it was okay, so this kid's going to be in a free fall. And so people, Mel Kiper, but a lot of people got very frustrated. And so you were starting to see clips of him on social media. And I do think that the reactions kind of went a bit too far on Shedeur, because watching it, I was like, oh, right. He was good, and there are measurables that he needs improvement on. He doesn't have the biggest arm. He doesn't have a lot of those offensive gifts that a lot of these guys have. But the fact that he was able to drag that Colorado team to basically national relevance with minimal help, aside from Travis Hunter, was quite something. And so he has those intangibles that you really do like. But again, if we're going to be selling a guy on intangibles, let's not be screwing up the board interview and everything like that, right? So, but it was nice at least to see the videos. And it's oh, right, this isn't a guy who we're going to get to training camp and get to OTAs. And it's oh, maybe he should have been throwing left-handed the whole time. That was the problem. He wasn't that bad, but he wasn't nearly as good as he thought he was. And I actually think the Browns are now a bad landing spot for him. I think they were a spot that made the most sense. You have the big money quarterback in Deshaun, who's probably not playing this year. Who, again, by the way, can never mention him without saying, awful human being. So you have that. You have Joe Flacco, who is in there as the whatever. Now, you're going to have some explaining to do, because the social media video came out with Deion Sanders being Joe Flacco, he's my age, which is a funny line, but kind of an awkward thing for your dad to say about your teammate now. But then they also draft a quarterback. And so, it just, once you do that, I feel like it takes you out of the Shedeur thing, regardless of like, okay, it's fallen enough. I just feel like no matter what is happening, whether it is Flacco or whoever at quarterback, there's always going to be but what about Shedeur? What about Shedeur? What about him? Why not? Hey? And the Browns aren't in a spot that lets him develop in that way. And now you have two rookies who you're trying to develop. So honestly, like, I feel like what should happen is Joe Flacco gets to just like hang out, like read the playbook, whatever, get a couple of things, but it should be Shedeur getting all the reps in practice, which is kind of what the Patriots were able to do with Drake May, because Jacoby Brissett knows the system that he was in, so you let him just kind of zip the ball all the way around, whatever, and Drake May gets all the reps in practice because what's Jacoby going to turn into at this point? You let Drake May get a lot of the reps in practice, let him develop so that he can hit the ground running. You have two rookie quarterbacks you're going to try to do that now with out in Cleveland. So I think they screwed it up quite a bit. I think all of the different sides really did screw that one up.